let me introduce you formally. So,
Okay.
and I gave you I think I left you a voicemail. So I gave you some preface on this saying that, this is a series of interviews with, business owners, some local small companies, some bigger companies. Um, and the whole idea is that we're going to draw from the collective experience of these entrepreneurs and business leaders in the hopes that people might find this information valuable, and especially young people. You, as of course one of my mentors, has a great deal of experience on a lot of different businesses, and I wanted to make sure we got you on the ticket for it. So let me formally introduce you, Mitch Joseph. I'm going right from your bio, Mitch. So
Oh boy.
you correct me if I miss anything or if I get anything wrong, but you are a Chicago native. You graduated from Purdue University, lived in Old Town and Lincoln Park for most of your adult life before moving to Chicago's North Shore.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's your first blooper.
What do you
What
mean?
university did I graduate from?
DePaul University.
You know what you said?
What?
Purdue.
I did say Purdue?
Yeah.
No
Roll
way.
it back, please.
I'm going to. Why would I say Purdue? All right, let's start it.
Roll it back. Take two.
Take two. All right. Mitch Joseph, welcome. You're a Chicago native, graduated from DePaul University. You lived in Old Town, Lincoln Park for most of your adult life before moving to Chicago's North Shore with your wife and 3 kids. You were also an independent floor trader for more than 15 years at Chicago Mercantile Exchange, also spent time at the Board of Trade and Chicago Board of Options Exchange. In early 2000s, you turned your attention to real estate, where you renovated and developed properties in the Wicker Park, Pilsen neighborhoods, and also built a rental portfolio in the greater Chicagoland area. And if I remember correctly, you've also done some things down in one of your favorite areas of the country down in North Carolina, right?
Absolutely correct. Yes.
You've also been you started a hedge fund, and we'll get into that and talk about it. But the namesake of that was flow trading. Mm-hmm. And you built up a portfolio and used your knowledge of futures and option trading experience to manage a fund in excess of $70 million. Mm-hmm. And in the course of building flow trading, you helped create a proprietary trading platform with a partner and implemented successful algorithmic and synthetic trading strategies.
Right now that nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yes. I had to add to that some of your personal endeavors. You're an avid racquetball and squash player, mm-hmm. and you enjoy a host of other sporting activities, including golf, paddle tennis, skiing, snowboarding, and I'm sure anything that involves a racket and a ball.
Yeah.
And you raise your 3 kids alongside your wife, the lovely Dr. Raina Joseph.
Correct. Well, that when I hear that, it sounds like I guess if you live long enough, you do a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Right.
This is true. You've got a collective wisdom, I guess, through your own professional development, and I assume, some mistakes along the way.
Oh, of course.
Yes, and those are things we'd like to learn from and talk about.
Oh, that's cool. So this is a podcast about mistakes, huh?
Yeah. And you've also created a fair amount of wealth for you. Talk about those things in detail personally, but from by my standards, of course, you're a mentor of mine. You've developed a fair amount of wealth for yourself and your family, mm-hmm. and also mentored others.
Yes.
So you are competitive by nature. You've always been competitive. Of course, we have a long history and playing racquetball together, and we're not going to get into, who is the better racquetball player back in the day. I think we want to keep this focused on you.
Therefore we can go into that subject.
Yeah, well, let's get back on track here. So, but you've always been competitive by nature, right? And this is something, yes, great. Yes, the Marshall.
You could put
Okay,
that on. You could put that on the video if you need to.
that's great. Yes, you are the current sheriff. I will
All right,
I
you
will
can let
I
your
will I will
audience.
concede. I'll
You can
concede.
let your audience know that I showed you on video.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Now that we got that out of the way.
I guess I should add that to your bio. Mitch is the reigning sheriff of racquetball. All right, so here we are. Let's just talk about your competitive nature. Of course, this is something I've experienced with you, and we've had some great competition over the years. But just in general, you're competitive. Where were you born with that? Where was that ever instilled in you? Where do you get that from?
Yeah, so that's actually a really, really good question. And to be quite honest, I've never really thought that much about that as a characteristic of success in business. But to answer your question directly, yes, I think I've always been competitive, but not ruthlessly on the exterior. I've always,
What does that does that mean? You're competitive with yourself?
No,
Yeah.
I am competitive. I mean, I set goals and stuff like that, but I'm competitive in what people would consider a competitive situation. But I'm never ruthless to my adversary or my opponent. I'm never rude. I try not to be anyway. I try and let my actions speak louder than my words, so I don't trash talk or anything like that, unless it's you.
Great.
That's really something that I'm going to actually think about now that you brought that up right off the bat, because the reason I was hired in my first job was because of competitiveness. This is what I was told. Just to go back in my very, very first job, which is probably the only actual job I ever held for a few years. And then I was much more entrepreneurial from that point forward and still to today. However, I was noticing, and it was a fair trading company at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And I was noticing that the people they were hiring were like, I'm not the biggest guy by any means, pretty small, relatively speaking. And I noticed they're hiring these guys, 6'4", 6'5", 220, 230. And the thing that everyone had in common, which I learned, was they were all D1 athletes, all of them, or they were extremely competitive in some sort of a sporting endeavor. And this company decided for the trading industry, you had to have this innate competitiveness to be successful, to have any chance of success in the business model that they had, training futures traders, even options traders, which I got into later, which takes a little more mathematics than athleticism, but it doesn't hurt to also have that competitive nature. So it's a very, like many businesses, very cutthroat. And I think you need somebody who has that competitive edge or, inside competitiveness to succeed. And I think that has been part of my journey all along the way, whether it is actual sports and me thinking I'm actually better than I really am. That happens a lot.
Clearly.
Yeah. Very funny. And or if it's if it's in any endeavor, if it's in business, I kind of want to do, so that's where like the heart competitive inside, I want to do the best I can up to my capabilities. But again, I'm not like a jugular. I don't go for the jugular. I'm not that kind of I don't have that type of personality. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
sure.
And what you followed up. You asked, was that instilled in me? Were my parents, or not by my parents, other than the typical parent thing of you can do anything you want and whatever, you set your mind to, all that kind of cliche stuff. But there is one thing that I would say set me off on a more competitive path. So I have an older brother. So
Okay.
people will hear this story probably and
Yes.
can relate to this. He was 7 years older than me, but he was a great big brother, still is, by the way, and he's still 7 years older than me. So one of the things was I was always into sports. I love sports, and he was a great big brother, and he would bring me along with him to compete, not to compete, but, to kind of hang out with his friends who were playing sports. And, if I was lucky enough to be able to be called to, play left field because their guy didn't show up, I was so excited, right? And then as I got older and older, I wanted to compete with these guys. I wanted to actually be able to not embarrass my brother and compete. So whatever it was, tag football outside in the street, baseball, hockey, whatever the sport was, skiing, all that kind of stuff. And then, eventually I got better than all of them. So screw that. That definitely was a childhood catalyst. But other than that, no pressure, no,
Okay.
nothing like that.
Your brother was somebody that you looked up to?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Along those lines, was there anybody in your life that, influenced you the most in terms of, mentorship or in terms of inspiration?
This is going to sound horrible, but yes, but it's not going to be what you think.
Okay.
So I hope people cannot necessarily relate to this, but, and I'm not even sure if I, want to bring this out there, but as I was growing up, I saw like my father, who was loved by everybody, the greatest guy. Everyone loved my dad, nicest guy, but not driven at all. Okay. So, good dad and all that kind of stuff. But I saw as he, I was only in my teens, but I saw that, he never really, we'll get into this a little bit, which I would like to talk about balance, right? Balance is a key thing in my life.
Yeah.
But he never put enough into truly providing for his family when he had opportunities to do so. Some people don't have the opportunity. He did. And I saw through the years, as I was in my teens and 20s, that, I don't want to say he let the family down, but because he did other things that were great. But I noticed that he put himself in a position that was not desirable. And he was then dependent on me, basically, as he got older. Like not that he was older than, he died actually when he was kind of young, but in his, 50s and 60s, he didn't have much financial strength, let's put it that way. And he became dependent, which was a horrible thing to see. And watching that and seeing that happen, that motivated me to never do that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It's really, something that you could perceive as negative, but turning it into a positive, really.
Yeah, it definitely motivated me to have a little more focus on finances.
Yeah.
And I would say being aware of opportunities. That's a really, really good way of putting it. Not everyone has the opportunities, but I do think you have to work for it. You can make your own opportunities. But I watched him let opportunity by opportunity go by, and it was really confusing to me. And then I saw the end result, and it was also disappointing. And so I think, on the competitive side, my brother, on the self-motivation part, by a negative impact sort of was my kind of how my dad handled things.
Well, when you realized how important opportunity was and the importance of acting on those opportunities, when you started to realize the importance of building of money and building wealth as something that's important to your life. Did this happen for you at a fairly young age? When was this? You're the type of person that it wouldn't surprise me if 6 months after being born, you started a lemonade stand, but
well, it wasn't quite like that, but not far off. So I did have, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, of course, but when I was really, really young, I'm talking, yeah, pre 10 years old, like
Okay.
8, 9, just my living situation. I lived in a very humble 2-flat. My grandparents lived on the second floor. I lived on the first floor, and they actually had a shop. It was a coat shop. Okay. Down on Maxwell Street back in the day, way back. And on Sundays, I would actually go to work with them. Now I think I started when I was like 9. And I got to see firsthand how they ran the business, what the clientele was like, which was very interesting. Just kind of what the community was like there. But my grandfather, both my grandmother and grandfather, they were from Europe. They came over, they opened the shop, and they were that American, kind of success story. And I was allowed, I would say, I was trusted and allowed as like a, let's say 10 or 11-year-old at that point, as I would go and see what was going on, to actually get involved. I mean, they would let me run the cash register. They would let me actually wait on certain people and get them help. And from that moment, I was kind of into understanding the exchange of money for goods and services and all that kind of stuff. I did find it fascinating. Plus, as a kid, you love working the cash register. Ding, it's fun. Right. And, of course, they would pay me for my day a little bit. Maybe it was $10, which was a lot, back then for the day. And I saved a little bit of money back then. As I got a little bit older, just to make it a little more relevant, I started working when I was able to at 16. I was looking for a job that would pay me kind of more than minimum wage. Did that for a little bit growing up. But I think more telltale was when I was in college. College was kind of a turning point for me. Originally, I was very into music. I was going in as a music major, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for sure. But, I played performance trumpet and all that kind of stuff. I studied with guys at DePaul University, some of the greatest teachers there when I was in high school. So that's why I followed through there. I had an epiphany around my sophomore year. My sophomore year I realized that, hey, and this is kind of where you're asking yourself, you got to be honest with yourself. If you love being a musician and you really, really love it, this is what you should do, but to be the best at what I was going after, which was performance, maybe classical performance and jazz performance, a trained musician, you have to be really dedicated, like all in, and you have to be also financially like the top 0.00001% to make a decent living at it. So I had a good look in the mirror. And I said, I love music, but and nothing against teachers, because God need them all. But yeah. I just knew I didn't want to be a music teacher. I didn't want to be a music teacher. And, it's a great profession, but it just wasn't for me. So in my sophomore year, I went to the people who were grooming me to be a professional musician, and I let them know that I didn't think I wanted to pursue this solely. So I continued with the music. They were heartbroken, but also cooperative. And I told them I kind of wanted to take business classes, which was like, they never heard that come from a music student before. I said, I wanted to learn about finance. I want to learn about, marketing and accounting and how to run a business. And they're like, why? So anyway, it was during my sophomore year in college where I continued, and I still play music now, by the way, but I didn't do it as my sole profession. And I realized, like, if I was the best in the world as a musician, I could make X. But if I got into a business that I liked or whatever, I could probably make more and be, not as good. So I was somewhat motivated by making a good living. I'm not, it's not altruistic where, I wanted to just learn about this finance. I wanted to make some money. And I knew being a musician, it had to be a labor of love. And if I made money, great. And I kind of wasn't honestly willing to make that choice at that time. And so I figured music would take a second step and I would educate myself in the world of money.
Okay. And thus started your journey.
Thus started my journey. I will also mention in a corny way that for your listeners out there, at much later, so now I'm a mid-adult and trading on the floor and all this, right? Mid-aged adult. And one of the most like famous books, but also a very, very basic book that I would say shaped the second half of my business life was the simple book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Okay, it's a book that is very basic, but the concept is golden, and that really changed the second part of my business life of knowing what I really wanted to achieve and what my goals were, and how I did not want to have to work per hour for every dollar that I made. And I highly recommend that book for those who haven't read it. And some may find it, primary. Some may find it boring. I don't find it boring at all. But it was sort of the kickstart and a stepping stone for the entire evolution of how I started to think.
Still, which is still relevant today.
Absolutely.
And it's still one of the best read. And
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a background on your upbringing and how your ideas evolved on building wealth and making money, and some of the challenges that you had. What I'm getting at is, it's interesting that you point out that in the profession that you thought you were going to go into, your chances of building wealth were very slim. I mean, only the top few percentages of people would do well there, whereas in business you had a much bigger opportunity there to build wealth. Is it as easy to make money today as it was back when you were a mid-adult or a younger?
Sure. I don't think, everybody thinks this is the hardest time for whatever is going on. This is the worst time for this. This is the hardest time for that. I think every generation faces its own challenges. And I think today is equally, maybe even more opportunity, because there are so many more entrepreneurial minded people where you can get involved, or people will, if you're entrepreneurial, people might take a chance on you. So yeah, I think it's certainly not harder, and it may even be easier.
Okay, so the American dream is still alive. That's what you're saying.
For sure.
Okay,
for sure. Look at you.
We're not talking about me. Here's another good question I wanted to ask you. If the American dream is still alive, and it's in many ways easier to make money today, what stops a lot of people? You have been, you've got a lot of business acquaintances, friends. You've invested in multiple businesses. You've seen success. You've seen failures, and I've seen you shake your head sometimes at some of the things that, some of the opportunities that kind of get squashed, if you will. And what is it that stops people from becoming successful? Is it mental? Is it training? Did they not read Rich Dad Poor Dad? What?
Look at this.
Yes.
Of all the books here, I keep this one there.
There you go.
In that while.
You should get it autographed. It's still he's still on doing a lot of YouTube.
I met him a few times, actually.
Did you?
Yeah. Interesting character. He's changed a little bit over the years, but he's very worthwhile talking to. To your question, what keeps people from either taking the plunge or doing what they want business wise? Is that the direct question?
What's hindering them? What stops them from being successful? All
right, there's more. Of course, everyone has extenuating circumstances, but there's the saying, just do it. There's a lot to be said for that saying, but you also don't want to go in blind. You don't want to just, this kind of alludes back to a bit of my my mantra, which is the 3 words, which is balance, balance, and balance. You've heard in real estate, location, location, location.
Yeah.
I'm all about balance, balance, balance. And that applies more to the macro side of business, family, spending money on goofy stuff, investing. So balancing things out is key. But if you bring it down to, let's say, opening a business, or why don't people go into business? There's a couple reasons. I think fear, of course, is the number one. It's always the number one thing. Fear. Everyone's afraid of failure. And so some people have the money, they're afraid to do it. People who don't have the money are afraid they won't get the money. Fear of knowledge. I don't know enough about what it is I'm going to do or how to run the business. So fear is probably the number one. Then I would say you do need a semblance of education about what you are trying to accomplish, but you don't have to know it all. As a matter of fact, it's sometimes best if you don't know it all, but you find the people who do know it all. Okay, that is a key, is surrounding yourself with the people who know what you don't know. It's impossible to be the best at everything, even though you and I try, Dave. It's when you recognize that you can't absolutely do it all, that there's a sense of peace actually comes about you, and you have to hire people who are smarter than you, and then you're in a good position. But yeah, so on one hand, I would say educating yourself to a certain point is worthwhile, because it's going to give you a level. So if you know nothing about the business you're going into, why are you going into that business? Okay. So, and if you're going to be the one running the business, I think it's worthwhile to know, even though you may hire an accountant or a CPA or a business advisor, you have to have meaningful discussions with these professionals so you can be at the table and understand what they're trying to tell you. Okay, if somebody puts financials in front of you, as a balance sheet or a P&L or something like that, a profit and loss statement, and you have no idea what they're talking about, it makes it really hard for them to do their job. Okay, so getting a basic education, and it doesn't take much more than a basic education. You can find everything online for free. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to go to community college. You can find everything on YouTube that's decent, and websites that teach you enough to have a conversation with professionals. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then I would also say the thing that holds people back, and I'm not going to, all right, I am going to pat myself on the back here. One of my strengths is a certain level of ignorance. Okay. And my strength is this: you learn so much more by doing than reading. Okay. So I feel that you have to get a basic understanding of what it is you're trying to accomplish, or basic understanding of the business you're going to run, or something like that. But if you just read, you're never going to do. And I will personally do less reading, enough where I feel like I got a basic idea, and I jump in. And then I will learn more than the guy who's reading. I'll learn more in 30 days than the guy who's taken 2 years of college, okay, by doing it. So if you never, ever, and that's the other thing that holds people back, is they never pull the trigger. They never go ahead and say, let's go, let's do this. And I have done that a lot. And yeah, failed for sure, but learned a ton. And I've succeeded a lot more than I failed by doing that. So it's scary as hell. But if you are, let's say, satisfied with the fact that even if you fail, you're building education, realize there's going to be some value at the end of that. Now, I am intentionally not including the big thing out there, which is money. People go, I can't do this because I don't have the money. I can't do this because I can't get the money. And it's, I can't. So the one thing I've learned later in life is money will follow. Okay, if your idea is good, if you, and we'll get, I think I need to talk about that. If you are good, meaning you being the pivotal part of the business. I don't necessarily even mean good at knowing what you're doing, but that's part of it. But you have to be a good person. You have to be something that people can get behind. And if your team is good, money will follow. It can't help but follow. It's like osmosis in a way. Money finds opportunity. So yet there will be people say, I don't even have $100 to open a bank account. Okay, you're right. If you same thing there. If you don't have $100 to open a bank account, then I would say get a job for a little while in the area that you like, and you have to balance out how much you spend with what you save and what you're really trying to accomplish by having this job. You can learn on the job, but if you can accumulate some funds to then put towards your business, you're going to find more people who are interested in following on with you than if you put nothing into your own business. So that's another key point, is you do have to have some money. I think it's, if you have a backer that's going to back you, great. But I think it's naive, and you hear this out there, you don't need any money to do this. Sometimes that's true, but I'd say in most cases, you need some money before you kind of get started. It's just because, you might have to feed yourself, or if you have a family, even more so. But, you need some reserves, you need some cush money, and you need some skin in the game for people to believe in you. Even if they totally believe in you, they're going to believe in you a little more if you got money in the game. Okay.
Makes sense. All right. So you've met people that maybe have all the skill sets they need. They have the semblance of knowledge. They're willing to pull the trigger, and seemingly have everything they need to get started and have, build success. They have some measure of success, but somehow let it all go to waste.
Okay. So with everything that you mentioned, it would be hard. So going to waste, I'm assuming it's something that just implodes as opposed to just stays level. Like, there are businesses that don't grow but stay stagnant because sometimes the owner wants it to be that way, which is fine. But like, if you have everything going for you, you have a good team, a good leader, you have money behind you, unless it's something that is completely out of your control, that, like a war breaks out or something. I mean, something that, then I don't know. I don't know what would make that business fail, other than completely, what they call that, the black swan event.
I've heard people that have everything seemingly to get started and run a business, but they don't, they lack the commitment to, get over that hump, get past that startup stage. They lack the discipline to manage their success once they have it. They, maybe
that happens a lot.
Maybe they're a victim of their own personality or demons. You talked about a semblance of knowledge and being willing to admit, you have narcissistic personalities out there, just can't get past that.
Not everyone is meant to be a business owner. You have to be extremely honest with yourself, kind of like I was with music. it's a weird example, but it was really, really hard for me. I mean, I was groomed for this and all that. And then, you have to have this moment where you're honest. You have to be a business owner and to have success and to have people essentially believe in you. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have a certain competitiveness, a drive where failure, is not an option, even though if you do fail, it's not always a failure. So you have to have the willingness to be able to fail, but also have the commitment to want to succeed. And, you not everyone has that. That's okay. Some people are much more comfortable getting a W-2 salary and they can sleep at night. That's what they want. Those people are not, necessarily meant to be business owners. Somebody who feels they have all the characteristics that we say you need to be a successful entrepreneur, business owner, you first of all do have to take the plunge. You can't sit on the sidelines forever. You have to, and if you can't take that step, then you have to look in the mirror and say, maybe I'm not that person I thought I was. Because, that's the most obvious thing. I think those who are best prepared, both a little bit financially, have a little cushion, and those who feel they have enough education are going to, and those who have the personality, the drive, the competitiveness, and the creativity. Your best laid plans are not a straight line. They never are. And you have to be able to adapt to situation, personnel, government changes, change of the rules. So you have to have a certain mindset and flexibility going in. So if you think you have that personality with all those things that I mentioned, you're doing yourself and the general community a disservice by not taking the plunge. At the same time, if you do not have that personality, you're also doing yourself a disservice by taking the plunge. So sometimes it takes a good hard look in the mirror, and you just have to be completely honest with yourself. I knew early on there was no way I was going to work for anybody else the moment I didn't have to, but I knew I had to at the beginning. I did not come from money at all. Story about my dad, there was no money. So it was definitely a ground up endeavor. And so it's not like somebody said, hey, here's some money, start a business, or hey, go to an Ivy League school and get yourself a job. No, I needed to accumulate money in order to get to my goal of never having to work for someone.
People who recognize and decide that, being in business is good for them. What is, if you had to pick one common trait, is there a common thread amongst successful entrepreneurs and business owners?
Not successful. I was going to say like confidence, but there's a lot of confident people who don't have the other ingredients. So no, I don't know if there's just one trait. I think it is a combination of, somewhat competitiveness, creativity. I will tell you this. Okay, here's a big one. Those who are most successful in the long run, one of their traits is super high integrity. Integrity is a trait that I don't know if it can even be taught, but is so valued by the business community. Those people who don't have integrity sometimes are very successful for a certain period of time, but they usually end up failing or going to jail or getting caught or for whatever that means. Those people who have the greatest success, I think, have the highest integrity. Not only do they want to do well for themselves, but they want to do well for their employees. They want to do well for their team. They want to do well for their community. They will try as hard as they can to deliver on their word. And many of these people rely less and less on written contracts. They will have agreements, but they don't get bogged down with written contracts where every word is dotted and I, as opposed to the word of other people. So people like to talk about my early industry. Traders were traders. Oh, there's a lot of bad people out there who were traders. It's an industry with a lot of scoundrels and all that.
Like car
And I'm not
salesman.
and what?
Like car salesman.
Yeah, exactly.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, they have their reputation, which I'm not going to say there's not those characters there, but that's a business actually that's built entirely on integrity and word of mouth from trader to trader. There's no contract. You're making a deal with somebody in the pit. Your word is your business. So of the stories that make the headlines about people who don't have high integrity in that business, I would say, high 90s, 98% of those people do, and they build their entire livelihood on their word. And so that's how I was brought up and trained from my employer at the time. If you made a trade, you can't later say, oh, I didn't make the trade, or, I thought it was a 1 lot, not a 10 lot. It is your word. You have to own up to it. So in business, I've noticed through the years that those who are successful and those who attract investors, those who attract the money, generally have the highest integrity. Some people who are trying to set up a business quick or whatever. So I would say that's probably the number one thing, is to have the highest integrity.
And is that an important characteristic of what you would define as leadership or good leadership?
Well, good leadership has a number of characteristics, but I think, in having the highest integrity will build your reputation, and, one misstep, it's all gone. That's the thing. You can build this tower for years and years. You do one underhanded thing to try and maybe get to the finish line quicker, and if you become exposed, your entire tower comes tumbling down. Building integrity takes a long time. I mean, having integrity should be innate, but building a reputation for integrity takes a very, very long time. Once you have it, it's the most precious thing that you can get, because you can do business deals on a handshake. If your integrity is at a certain level, you could basically tell somebody, I will back you, or you will have the money by this point. This is the deal that we understand it. And you've heard that, back of an envelope deal on the back of a napkin or something like that. You can jot a few points down and then hand it off to your attorneys to make it legal without too much BS in there. You make it very simple, and you have a deal. But it takes two people who have that characteristic who have built up that integrity and to make that happen. So as a younger person, I would say always keep that in the back of your, not in the back of your mind, keep that in the front of your mind. What are you saying to people? How are you coming across? What are you promising? Are you promising something you probably can't deliver? Huge mistake. You'll never get another dollar for your next deal or whatever. It's just, what's that saying? Under promise, over deliver.
It'd be over promise, under deliver. Yeah. I use that.
Under promise, over deliver.
Over deliver. Yeah. That's the better route.
Right. Under promise, over deliver is good, but you have to deliver. So that's the thing. You asked me about leadership. It's the integrity part of leadership. So absolutely it is. But here's another thing that I've learned probably later in life. Okay. The best leaders are the best listeners. Okay. You cannot be telling people what to do all the time, because people will resent you. And many times they actually know better than you. They may be in the field, for lack of a better. They may be doing the job that you did years ago, and now it's evolved and they know better than you. You may hear a suggestion that seems silly to you, but if you actually listen to what they're saying, maybe not everyone's that articulate, or sometimes people can't express themselves as well as you may be able to do as the leader. But if you listen to what they're either saying or trying to say, and how you approach these people or how you present their ideas is really, really key. A great leader is a great listener, but a great leader can, so let's say, take concepts and ideas that may have not been articulated particularly well and make them, express them appropriately and articulate them for others. And a great leader can make everyone feel important, because why would you have them there if they're not important anyway? Okay, so everyone is important, but so there has to be a certain humbleness, humility to a great leader, which also is somewhat counterintuitive. And people react differently to different leaders too. So you also have to kind of know how your people around you react. Some people react better to more of a dictatorship. I don't work that way, but some people maybe do and respond to that. I don't want to even surround my people. I don't want to surround myself with people who respond to that even. So everyone has different, characteristics of what they find, but I'm telling you what I have experienced and found to be successful.
But let me engage you in this, because this is a topic that's close to me. Okay. And I relate to what you're saying. I feel in a leadership role that if I'm going to be successful, I'm going to draw from the collective experience of the people that I surround myself with. And
really good. Yeah.
And they begin to trust you, not just because of integrity and not just because you're going to be doing what you say you're going to do, but because you value their opinion. And I might get 10 different opinions. I might not take the advice of any of them, but maybe it helps me, avoid the pitfalls of the path that I'm going to take. Or maybe it leads.
Also, I think it broadens your perspective too. Yeah. They may be like on the fringe of what you're thinking about, or implementing a new policy, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing. Yeah. If you listen to the collective, you're going to have a much better perspective of how to approach the problem.
Well, a lot of people don't get started in business because of fear of failure. And I think to everybody, to some extent, more than others, has some fear. It wouldn't be natural to say that you don't have any fear.
Right. Yeah.
But also, I've never met anyone that, was successful 100% of the time. There are, you make informed decisions, you make the best decisions you can, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way you think they're going to work out. So can you think of some big moments in your life where, you made a decision, you took a certain path and you failed, and what did you learn from that experience, and how did you adjust coming out of that? I'm not talking about, whether you chose scrambled eggs or French toast on the menu. I'm talking about something significant.
Hey, breakfast is very important to me. Yeah. Of course, I eat breakfast at 2 a.m. All right, so, no, yeah, of course. It is part of the process, and you have to, you want to avoid failure, but when it happens, don't look at it as, the end of the world. It's a stepping stone for sure. So I've had a number. Oh my God. I've been in so many types of businesses and industries that I could draw from a number of experiences, but there's two things. One's a little more subtle that I learned, and one's a little more, I would say, macro that I learned. I'll use the macro one first. Okay. The macro one has to do in real estate. Okay. So, I got into real estate investing in, we'll just call it 2000, could have been 99, could have been 2001, but it was around 2000. And, one of the things I wanted to do was to develop a property. I don't have an architecture background. I don't have a developing background. I But I really wanted to do it. So as I was talking about before, I surrounded myself with, I learned enough to kind of get into the game, self-educated. I found a mentor to explain what a development project was all about. I learned the nomenclature of how to talk the talk and hang around construction people. And then I just freaking did it. I actually said, okay, buy a piece of land and I'm going to develop this property and we'll see what happens. Okay. So that project turned out to be successful, but along the way, yeah, it was a learning experience. My goal, now here's the difference. My goal in that first project was to, like, the wildest success would be to break even. I was considering it, you know, an on-the-job learning experience. And if it cost me some money, I was willing to pay for it, almost like an apprenticeship, you know, where I was learning from somebody. So I was supposed to be the head developer, and I asked somebody if I could basically follow them around and pay them, who had done this many times, and was willing to not make as much as they normally would, but so I could learn the ropes. And this thing turned out to be, in my eyes, you know, very successful. From a normal developer standpoint, you know, it wasn't a success. But that's not even the story I want to tell you. The story, I just saying that the thing is, I jumped in and I did it. And, you know, and then from that point, I did a number of other developments, which turned out to be fantastic. And I based it all on the failures of the first project. Okay, so that's a perfect example. Yeah. As far as an actual real life failure, I decided that, yeah, I was into residential investment. Now I did some development. I've still done development later on, but I figured I was going to get into commercial investment. So, you know, it was just a numbers thing. I felt pretty good. I had a small portfolio of residential. So I went in to this commercial development. And there were a couple of things that I learned about. Again, took some mentor. That's another key thing, by the way. You have to ask questions. You cannot be shy about asking questions and going to people who you might think don't want to give you their secret sauce or whatever. If they don't, they'll let you know. But many times people want to share with you. And if you don't ask them, you'll never know. So it's kind of, I've had responses all over the board like, hey, buddy, you know, learn on your own dime. Or, sure, let me show you how I did this, because they're proud of what they did and they want to share it with somebody. And sometimes they have kids, sometimes they don't have kids, and they want to share with somebody. So you would be shocked. I think for younger people, I've got a little advice for older people too, but for younger people, my advice is never be afraid to approach somebody and ask them questions, or ask if you could take them out for a cup of coffee or something like that. So I did that getting into the commercial real estate business. And I'll cut to the chase. The chase was, I bought a building way above my means, which was fine. All I wanted to learn, which I did, I learned how to protect myself if it didn't go well, but I couldn't see a way that this wasn't going to go well. Everything looked good. The mix of tenants was perfect. Without getting into the details of investing in commercial real estate, it checked all the boxes, and it had some huge upside potential at the same time. Particularly, this was near Midway, and they were going to expand the Orange Line to go right by this property. There were a lot of things looking up for it, and it was well occupied with a diverse tenant mix with a couple of good anchors. State Farm Insurance was there. I don't know, for people who may know this, Kelly Temporary Services was there. So, of course, this happened during the 07-08 implosion of real estate. One of the things that I was able to do when I borrowed the money, which I learned from past experience, was to have non-recourse loans. Basically, if the deal didn't work out, the bank would basically get the property. but I couldn't see how this wasn't going to work out great. So this is what I'm saying. So extenuating circumstances. What happened? Well, the county imposed a strange tax on businesses per head count. So if you were a temporary agency, if you were, let's say, a business like yours and you had whatever, you had 10, 20 employees, they put like a head count tax on everybody, which was insane, but they were trying to raise money. If you had a temporary agency where you had 3 people in the office, but 200 people working for you, they taxed put a tax on all 200 people. So what the business did is they moved out of the county. They basically broke their lease, moved out of the county. Real estate imploded, recession 07, State Farm, my big tenant, started to consolidate offices. They moved out, and they consolidated their offices. There were issues with some medical practices. There were issues with malpractice, people in Illinois getting malpractice. They moved to Wisconsin, India. Everybody left, okay? It was ugly. And it got to the point where I had to decide, am I going to hand this building back? And how am I going to handle the lawsuits that come from the bank anyway, and all that kind of stuff. So, that turned out to be probably and I had to walk away. So I had private investors in that deal, and I had to explain to them that it did not work out. Okay. And they were all, big boys and girls about it. But I had presented this as, a can't lose deal. So I learned from that point on, you cannot present anything as a can't lose deal. Okay. Big mistake. So I lost the building. Cost me a decent amount of money anyway, because I had some, upfront, but it didn't ruin me because I had certain non-recourse loans in the deal.
Okay.
But this is the difference here. And again, here's how do you turn this into some sort of a positive? Okay. Because I just got through saying that every failure, somehow you can get something out of it.
Sure.
Right. This was pretty tough for me because I was still relatively new in real estate, and I was brand new into commercial real estate. So I realized that this wasn't going to be the end for me. I'm very competitive, right? And driven, and I was still going to continue doing real estate. And I realized that I would need these people who backed me the first time to back me, to have a core group of people backing me in my future projects. Now, who the hell's going to back you when you just lost all their money?
Hey, let's do this again.
Yeah. Hey guys, wasn't that fun?
Yeah.
You want another kick up the butt? Yeah.
Did you learn about, did it broaden your knowledge about, in factors that can influence the deal? Had you even considered, that the county or the whatever could pull these kinds of things out of their bag of tricks,
No. I was aware, of course, that, real estate comes and goes and ebbs and flows. Okay. Yeah. I had no problem with that. It did ebb higher, really, really hard. Everyone who is alive and in real estate knows how awful that was.
Yeah.
I did not get hurt on the residential side, ironically, because I was never overexposed. So I was only on that side. My rents covered my nut, and I never had to worry about having to sell to cover leverage.
Right.
So I was leveraged appropriately, which thank God I did that. But commercial, like multi-million-dollar buildings where the bank basically is your partner, and they don't, they're funding the property, not you. Real estate and residential, they're funding you more than the property. Okay?
Right.
So anyway, I digress there. But what I learned is, there's certain things that you could not possibly. How would anyone possibly think that, unless you have some into the county meetings that take place behind, in dark places and all that. No way to know that. So it wasn't a fault other than what I promised to my investors. You know, I'm like, look, if the numbers are this looks great. It's, you know, and so nobody blamed me. You know, they're like, look, there's no way you could have seen this coming. We thought we were insulated against the downturn because of the great tenant mix we had and the tenant AAA, you know, the character of the tenants we had. And the possibility of the orange line. By the way, the orange line extension never took place. Mm. The mistake I made really was, like I said, over promising and under delivering, even though it wasn't, you know, it wasn't necessarily my fault. The thing is, you have to realize that just because it's never happened before in business doesn't mean it's not going to happen. You know, even on the trading floor, people, I remember I remember looking over at the meat quadrant and people were like, oh, hogs have never traded this high ever. I'm selling it short. And then it like doubled the next day, is limit up the next day, limit up the next day. Never seen this before, limit up the next day. You know, people go belly up, no pun intended. So pork bellies. So yeah, what you have to realize that just because it's never happened before doesn't mean. So all you can do is go in with the best intentions and the best integrity and with a good game plan, but things don't always work out as planned. Now, there was nothing I could do at this point, but one of the things that I realized was I was going to need this core group of investors. So I did make a promise to them after the fact that even though we all lost our money, that I was going to pay them back for their loss. Okay. And I hinted that in exchange, it wasn't conditional by any means, but I hinted for their support in the future, more or less. You know, hey, this didn't work out. Here's why. I think we all understand, but it wasn't your fault. It wasn't necessarily my fault. But as the leader of this project, I want to make you guys whole if I can. And I was fortunate enough. This is not the case for most people. I was fortunate enough to be in a position to make everybody else whole. Cost me a lot of money, but I figured this was a pivotal moment in my business career. I had to make a choice of, do I walk away and let everyone lick their wounds, which I was entitled to, and everyone understood it. Nobody was really pissed. They understood it. They were big boys and investors, and they'd done it before, and girls. I did have a fair amount of women too, so I just want to point that out.
Okay.
Nobody was mad. They were upset, of course, and disappointed, but they realized it. So I decided, okay, wow, these are really great people. Let's see if I could make them whole, can I parlay that into something even better than what I have here? And long story short is I did. I took my own pocketbook. I paid them all back. Put me behind the eight ball a little bit, but I realized I would probably have their undying love and support if they wanted to going forward. And to this day, we're talking, 15, 17 years later, all these people are still involved in all the projects that I do because of the integrity that I brought to them. And just, I wanted to make them whole. And so that paid dividends 10 times over of what I put out of pocket at the time. Now, I realize not everybody can do that. That's almost unrealistic. But the concept of trying to treat the people who are good to you well, or the concept of trying to make everybody whole if you can, will pay dividends long after you make your initial outlay. Okay. So that was one thing. There's one other failure that I do want to talk about. It's more as I was later in life. I'm still in real estate, still in the trading business. I'm still a hedge fund manager for a crypto fund, but more on the peripheral and advisory, let's say, side of things as opposed to the day-to-day operations. But before so let's just say, 10 years ago, I got more into the private equity, investing, seed money, angel money, and all that kind of stuff. So some of it works out, some of it doesn't. And again, I base a lot of it on who the leader is, who the team is. And I have a series of, questions I ask myself, or a checklist more or less, that before I go specifically into making an investment. But You always hear the story about never lending or borrowing from family and all that. So, but there's always a but, right? So had a couple situations where I had family member, also friend, different situations where their ideas were pretty good and they wanted money and all that kind of stuff. And so I did it without checking everything off my checklist, but I did it because of them. And that's actually not a good idea. All right. Both failed. All right. And I was I was upset a little bit more than I should have been. And I just realized that even if it's a great idea, all right, it's not a great idea. By the way, the relationships are still good, but I don't know if everyone would come through it that well, because both parties kind of have to, be mature about it. But, I would say, take the advice that I now have. The advice that I now have is if you think that it's a good idea and you check most of your boxes, but you want to help somebody out, consider that money gone. Okay. Don't expect to ever get that money back. And if you can still make the investment with that mindset, then go ahead and do it. But you have to be honest with yourself. In other words, you have to really realize you're never getting that money back. And don't hold it against the person, of course, who's not going to pay you back, even though they say they will. If you're doing it for the reason of helping out a family member or a friend, okay, so that's the only time I bend the rules and take that mindset of I'm not getting this back. Every other time I invest in a good investment based on wholly the merits of the leader, the team, the project. I check all the boxes before I will put the money out. You have to know how you're going into it. Let me put it that way. You have to know how you're going into it. Most of the time going into a business thinking it's going to be successful and it's going to work and I'm going to make money and the product's going to serve the greater good and everyone's going to be la, la, la. It's going to be great. They don't all work out, of course. But when it comes to dealing with a friend or a family member, I don't care how great the idea is. And if it checks all the boxes, if you're an investor, go into it knowing you're never getting that money back. And if you can do that, make the investment. Hard stop.
So, yeah, I mean, there's, I think I've heard an old saying before, don't do business with friends, because if it goes bad, you lose the business and the friend, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think if you can go into it with that mindset, which is really hard, and you can't fool yourself about it. You got to be totally honest. And I've done it a few times post that, and I've given money, and I knew I wasn't getting it back, and I was right.
All right, so
I didn't get it back.
You brought up kids. If I asked your kids what they admire most about their father, what do you think they would say?
The one thing that they talk about a lot, and they make fun of me to a point where it's become a joke. I don't know if I told you this before, Matt, is my optimism. Say I'm optimistic to a fault that it's actually funny. Like no matter how something goes, I will find some sort of a silver lining in it. And I can take the worst situation and flip it. And, if something bad happens to my kid and they're crying because something horrible happened, of course you want to make them feel better, but I'll legitimately try and find something and that they can pull something positive out of, right? So optimism is definitely one of those things.
So
of course, as they get older,
your glass is always half full. That's what you're saying.
Of course, as they get older, you see a lot more eye rolling at you. Bad, But here's one of the funniest examples, which my youngest daughter used recently. She goes, "Dad, it's like even when we're on a road trip and we make a wrong turn, and we made a wrong turn, and you get off on the ramp, and it's gonna cost us another 20 minutes or a half hour. You go and say something like, 'Oh my God, look at this beautiful town. We would have never been able to see this town had I not made the wrong turn. You guys are so lucky to experience this. So, I mean, optimism is definitely one thing I think my kids would say.
Good.
You know, they've only known me. Obviously, I had kids much later in life, so they've only known me as the stay-at-home dad that is driving them to all their sports all the time. They don't know all the hard work and gazillion hours I spent, you know, prior to getting to where I am now. They think I have a, you know, this great cush life that just appeared out of nowhere.
Let's talk about love. You want to talk about love?
Like my love for you particularly?
No, see? No, not what you think. What, you know, about what you love to do and what is something you just don't like to do? I mean, you'll procrastinate it if at all possible.
Well, so it's funny because, you know, quote unquote, technically I retired like 5-6 years ago or something like that. I don't know, from the day-to-day grind of running, you know, businesses and all that. But I love kind of doing what I'm doing now, which is on the business side, getting to see the new up and coming opportunities that are out there. I love looking at a business and actually, you know, looking at the financials, which, you know, not many people enjoy that, but I like to see the health of the business that is real. So, and I like very much helping out, investing in worthwhile projects that I think, yeah, they're going to make money, you know, but I also like projects that have some sort of a value to them. I'm not a value investor necessarily or a green investor, but if the project has an element of that to it, all the better. So I like seeing that kind of stuff. I really enjoy it. I love having, this is the thing that I guess drove me to the point that I'm at. And I love being in charge of my own time. Time is the number one winner. If you can be in charge of your own time, and if you decide you want to work 24 hours a day by your choice, God bless you. You know, if you decide you don't want to work today at all and you want to go to your kid's baseball game, which I do all the time now, there's no, I love that. Like, I love being able to call my own shots. And that's,
let me ask you about that. You know, so, you know, you've, yeah, I think this is one of the things I appreciate about you. You've got so many friends and so much family that you surround yourself with, and you've got all these business ventures, and you really make time for everybody that's important in your life. You know, I know we don't talk that often, but if I, you know, 3 months from now I called you up and said, Mitch, I really need to see you, whatever, you're going to make time. And
absolutely.
So certainly appreciate that, feel privileged to be part of that. But it all comes from balance in your life. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with, you know, and I don't know if it's something that you've really worked at from an early part of your life, or something that, you know, kind of evolved once you got more successful. You were able to control things a little more and create that balance. But how important is it to you? And, you know, how have you gone about, you know, creating that balance?
So this is the most important question you've asked. It is the foundation, actually, of everything. So my advice to younger people is balance, 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 and I'll explain it in a second. And my advice to older statesmen is balance, balance, balance. It never changes. The weighting may change a little bit, but if you lose sight of the concept of balance in your life, something's going to pay the price. And I have, you know, we could do an entire podcast on how important this is.
Yeah.
did I just invite myself to another podcast? No.
I think you did.
This is so important that it actually deserves an entire episode, because all the things we talked about, again, I talk about integrity, but balance probably trumps all. And here's why. I'll try and make it as quick as I can to get the points I can, but it changes when you're young and it changes when midlife, and changes when you're towards the end of your working career. But I don't think it ever goes away. It never actually changes. So what am I talking about? Let's put some concrete concepts. Some concrete examples to this concept is really what I meant to say. So let's talk the early person, the person who's graduating college, the person who is working for somebody but wants to maybe go out on their own and start their own business. So why do you need balance there? And when I talk about balance, the main 3 points are your money, meaning your business life, anything having to do with that, your family, which is self-explanatory, and your friends. Okay. Now, people will say, oh, some people are more spiritual. Put that in the family category. Or what about time for yourself? Be kind to yourself. Put that in the family category. You're your own family. Okay. So you can subdivide this all you want, but I don't. I basically just think about money, family, and friends. And if you spend too much attention on one, the other two will suffer. If you spend too much on two of them, the third one will suffer. Now, sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you have to spend all your time on, let's just say, making money. You have to spend all your time at your work and your business. But if you have spent time prior to that building up your family and your friends, they're going to understand for a while. Okay. If you spend all your time with your friends and none with your family, they're not going to want you to hang out with your friends because they think you don't love them or you don't want to be with them. And it could be a girlfriend, even. It could be a spouse. It could be your kids. So one is going to suffer while you're paying attention to the others, but you have to monitor all of them. If you have spent time in a great relationship with your significant other, and that significant other knows that for a period of time, you're going to have to sway the balance a little bit more towards your business. Hopefully you've done a good enough job where that person is supporting you and behind you. But if you just assume they're going to support you because everyone knows you need money, it's not going to work. Okay. And it will suffer. So at the beginning, that's part of it. I'm also addressing a younger audience for this part of it as well. When you are spending time on your, so in other words, for a younger person, you can't spend too much time on your friends, you can't spend too much time on your family, you can't spend too much time on your business, but you have to spend enough time on all of them. Okay. So you are the best judge of, what needs attention. When you are spending time with your family, make them the most important thing, period. So, and they actually are the most important thing, period. So let them know it. And so you can't be distracted by your cell phone when your kid is talking to you about something you may not even care about. Okay. This is more for the middle group people who are now starting families and all that stuff. But let me go back to the person starting out, because there is a thing about business that is really, really, really important part. So let's just assume that you have a good relationship, or you're not in a relationship right now, whatever it is, you're able to focus on your business. While you're in your business and you're making money, you might be on a salary. You probably are. You could be making a little, you could be making a lot. This is also, I'll go against my rule there. I want you to subdivide balance here. This all has to do with business, but you need to subdivide. Okay, so I have tons of examples, which I'll say for another time. But I don't know why I tuned into this early on, but it just was a gift. Okay. I had a ton of people I knew who made way more money than I did, and they're still working for a salary right now. Okay. They need to work to survive. And I knew a ton of people who work, and they've saved all their money, and they have a lot of money, but they have nothing else in their life, and they are miserable. Okay. You won't understand that until you're later in life. So as you know, I mean, you can't experience things until you've experienced them. People can tell you, but it's the same thing like a doer. Okay. You can read about it, you can hear about it, but until it actually happens to you and you actually go through it, it will never hit home the way it does until you experience it. So my advice to a younger person, if you have entrepreneurial goals, if you have ideas of starting a business or working a business, you have to save money for that business. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Okay. You can't, let's say you're making, I'll just throw out a number. You're making $50,000 and at the end of the year, you're getting a $50,000 bonus. Okay. You can't go out and buy a $100,000 boat. Okay. It's not that you can't, but if that's all you want out of life, great. By the way, that boat will depreciate and all that kind of stuff and not be great. It's a horrible investment, but it's a lot of fun. And if your intent is to only have fun at this age, know that, honor that, and say, I'm spending all my money on fun, but you will most likely pay for that later on. Ideally, why not have some fun? Okay. Have some money set aside for your goals of starting a business, and, have some money to, do whatever you want with. Either go ahead and save that, give to charities, if or just you don't know what you want to do with that. But if you spend all your money on fun, you will pay dividends for that later on. I'm sorry, it can only go on so long. And I have a ton of, unfortunately, I have a lot of people who did that in the trading industry. Okay, you hear a lot about that, and it is true. They weren't bad people. They played by the rules. They made a lot of money, but they spent every cent they had. So I do think you need to balance that out a little bit especially when you're starting out. You have to have some pockets of, and know that the money that you're saving for your business isn't just sitting there. It's basically going towards what your ultimate business goal is. Okay, so there's that balance there. As you mature and get older, maybe you decide you're going to get married, you're going to have kids later on, and all that stuff. Yes, that becomes your number one priority. So what I said before, super important. Spend a ton of undivided attention on that which you are paying attention to at the time. So if you have a friend in need, if you have friends you haven't seen in a long time, if you have a friend that just wants to hang out, be there all in for that person at that time. It pays dividends, tenfold over if you're halfway there. Okay, so and then again, building a support team around you, it will grow and grow and grow. And the other thing I will say about that is know when to cut bait. Okay, not everyone is there to want you to be successful. There are people who don't want you to be successful. Okay, there are people who want to suck your time and they want everything from you, but they're not willing to give anything back. And you have to recognize that too. And so, in the trading business, I do have another saying, which is in many, many businesses, but you never want to burn a bridge. You never know. So if it comes time to cut bait, whether it's with a job you're in, a boss, a friend, and I hate to say this, but sometimes even a family member, you have to do it in a way that is mature, respectful, and hopefully doesn't burn a bridge. Even if you have to say some euphemisms along the way, like, look, let's take a break or whatever it is, mean what you're going to say, because maybe there is hope for the future. But you do not want negativity or people who are trying to intentionally bring you down. And believe me, there are people who will try and bring you down. There's not that many people who are happier for you than they are for themselves. They want themselves to be better than you and all that kind of stuff. And if you do feel like you're in a position of success, it's always great to help realize that you want to talk to people. You do not want to elevate yourself to a point where they feel you're so much better than them or anything like that. So, but yeah, back to the point. Sometimes you have to get rid of negativity in your life, and it's a hard reality. So doing it in a appropriate way is equally as important as doing it in the first place. Don't burn a bridge. If you have a boss that was really awful to you and it's time to move on, come up with something that you're grateful for. Come up with the fact that you're able to move on because of this person or something, and then bow out gracefully. I had people in the trading industry who did some, really not great things, to me. I never burned a bridge, and it has come back to pay dividends later in life. And you see them later in life. They've matured. There's a business they're in that might partner with something you're doing, or someone who could partner with them. You put them together, which is, by the way, recently happened to me. So it's funny. You just can't predict. But burning a bridge is not good practice. Now, the last thing I'll say later in life to the more mature people who are older like me, that this balance thing is it is so important to have the time, if you can, have the time with family and friends. Okay. Businesses, I know very, very, unfortunately, I know so many wealthy people who are absolutely miserable. They have more money than I will ever have, and they are unhappy because they don't have the core values that actually bring happiness, which, people say money doesn't bring happiness. Well, if you have no money, you're miserable. I don't care what you say. It's really, really hard to be happy if you have no money. Okay. But once you have a certain amount of money, then yes, then money doesn't bring happiness, but relationships do. So if I keep on talking about this like kid thing, if you do have kids and your kid's going on about something, an art project at school that you really don't want to listen to, if you let them know that you are listening and you actually do care about what they care about, you will be shocked. No child psychologist or anything like that, but you'll be shocked at how they remember these things, later on, and just how you can build the trust and relationship with them. And that's really the most important thing. And then you become a role model for them and how you act, how you treat. This is again for everybody, but especially older people. When your kids are watching you treat either employees or treat the person who just brought the water to your table, or the person who's cleaning, the busboy who's cleaning how you treat them, meaning these people, your kids are watching every bit of that. And you can do so much good by how you behave and how you act and how you treat other people and how they do that. So part of the balance is being aware of what you're doing on your business side, but much more into how you're seeding these little brains and stuff that are watching your every move, and pay special attention to that. That was a lot on balance.
That's we're kind of winding down here, so I think these are good topics to kind of end on, because they could turn into whole new podcasts. But at the end there, you're talking about how you act and how you carry yourself. I mean, I've we all know people that have a lot of money, or that would like to think they have a lot of money. It's all relative, of course. But they just don't act, in a way that's, that's becoming or kind, or somehow they think they're better than others, and they let you know it. I think the people that inspire me the most are those that don't let money change who they are, and they still treat people the same.
Yeah, no,
regardless, and I that's why I love hearing, I love hearing stories. I mean, when you and I sit down, you're talking about different things. I'm just, I'm engaged and inspired. I'm not, threatened. I'm not, unhappy about it.
And you know what, Dave? I mean, I did the same thing. I still do. So I had people in my life. Some of them are no longer here. I have people in my life. So a lot of times it is funny because, I'll sit down with some particularly older gentlemen who other people, I don't want to sit and hear stories. I I love them. I absorb them. I get, something out of them. So I do the same thing, in an older generation that, that you do. You can really garner a lot of morsels.
Yeah.
Learn a lot.
Always learning.
But I learned a lot also by watching how these very, very successful, very wealthy people treated others. And I took on that. Like, I was like, some people I'd be like, hey, I don't care how much money you got, dude, you're a jerk, for lack of a better word. I don't know how clean this has to be.
Right.
And other people were just super, humble and kind. And you see that coming through. And obviously, you did mention I do have a great family. I have great friends, but it takes work, actually. It's not, but it's rewarding work. Work may not even be the right word, but it takes attention. Okay, you can't just assume that things are going to be there and friends are going to be there. You have to give back and you have to be there for other people. So yeah, it's I feel very lucky. I feel very blessed to be in that position. But it doesn't go without paying special attention to what you're doing. I will just also say there are certain people out there that no matter how kind you are, no matter what you do, they're just miserable. And that's where I was talking about before. Sometimes you can try, you shouldn't feel, let's say you become a successful entrepreneur, you can try and help people, but don't feel obligated to try and save everybody, because you'll spend all your time doing that. And not everyone wants to be saved. And some people, they're sorry. So I think if you're kind and help people, that's great. But, at the same time, I've learned that some people don't want, or just are happier being miserable. And you just cut those ties and move on.
All right. Well, that's a good way to end on a positive note.
On a positive note.
Yes. Some people are just miserable.
Some people are just miserable. And that's the honest to God truth.
Yes, right.
Right. But all right. So
all right. It's the ball's in your court. I mean, thank you for taking all this time and making time for me. And I hope that people out there, I know I've learned a lot just talking in the last hour and a half or whatever we're doing here. So I hope people can really find something useful out of this conversation, because there's a lot to learn. Learn.
I hope so. And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Hold on. Let me hit the stop record button here.